Technology enabled by chips and semiconductors connect vehicles with various devices, services, and participants, making mobility safer, convenient, and faster. However, the trend is facing massive challenges due to the shortage of its core component, semiconductors, along with the increasing threat of cybersecurity. In this session, our panel of industry experts will discuss semiconductors crisis. What's next for connected vehicles? I would like to invite Mr. Nabeel Khan, editor, ET Auto, to moderate the discussion. Over to you.
Hello and welcome to ET Auto Connected Vehicle Virtual Summit 2021. I'm Nabeel Khan, and the panel discussion for this session is on semiconductor crisis. What's next for connected vehicles? We have seen as a consumer or users of car have been waiting for our favorite cars and products for a long time. What has really been causing these bottleneck, and what's the way forward? That's what we are going to discuss here with the expert panel. We have here with us Mr. Rajeev Chaba, President and Managing Director, MG Motor India. We are also joined by Veejay, Nakra CEO, Mahindra and Mahindra Automotive Division. We also have Mr. Vinod Aggarwal, MD and CEO of VECV, Volvo Eicher Commercial Vehicle. To talk about the communication and connectivity aspect, we are also joined by Mr. Mysore Madhusudhan, EVP Collaborations and Connected Solutions at Tata Communications. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining ET Auto Connected Vehicle Virtual Summit. Let's begin with the first and most pertinent question that's arising. When are we going to get over this crisis, and what really led to this kind of crisis? Chip shortage. Even though chips demand from the automobile industry is only about 14-15% of the overall demand. In such a scenario, why did this happen to the automotive industry, where we see the biggest pain? Look at the telecom industry, where mobiles, or you talk about the laptops, and everywhere we don't see that level of crisis, but automobile industry is the worst hit. I'll start with you, Veejay, because your vehicles have one of the longest waiting periods. So just want to understand from you.
Nabeel, thank you so much, firstly, for having us on your show. Crystal ball gazing, that's all I can say at the moment to your question. It's a $1 billion question with no easy answers. But just our reading and our understanding on the basis of conversations that we are having with all our suppliers, tier 1, tier 2, I think all of us understand that given the role of electronics in the vehicles these days, the number of semiconductors required has gone up significantly. So our understanding on the basis of conversations with all our suppliers is, I think we are going to need to wait it out as an industry for another 6 to 9 months for sure. Having said that, I think the worst is behind us, largely with Malaysia being a major supply base for ICs, which go into semiconductors, now coming back to normalcy. But given the kind of backlog that sits in the industry, I believe another 6 to 9 months is what we need to wait out. With the worst behind us, normalcy will start resuming probably in the first quarter of next financial year. That's just broadly how we are seeing it at the moment. And of course, as we get into more details, we can talk more about it.
Worst is over. Rajeev, the USP of your products has been connectivity, internet, IoT, and all that. So how does it impact your business, and how do you see this going forward? You think the worst is over, and in the next 6 to 8 months, you see things getting on track, especially when we see again a rise in cases in China and Germany? There could be some, bottleneck there. Do you feel that?
Yeah, so unfortunately, we are also a big sufferer, as Vijay said. You asked about shortage also. Shortage happened because of many reasons. By the way, even before this crisis, the fabrication plants of these chips were operating at almost 90% capacity. And the shortages were getting created even pre-crisis level, pre-COVID level. And because of the crisis, suddenly the scheduling from the auto industry went down drastically by 50, 60, 70% because we work on just-in-time inventory. So suddenly we realized that we have, in general, I'm talking about, I'm not talking any particular manufacturer, but we reduced the scheduling and because of that, when we realized that suddenly, no, the demand is not that bad and we were trying to come back, we were back in the queue for semiconductor. So we lost a little bit of time there. And then when we started talking to manufacturers, fab units directly, it takes time because the whole, the agility of that industry is not as high. It takes time. There is a gestation period. So because of many reasons now, the demand is going up for across the usage industries. It's not only for automotive, across the industries, the demand for chip is going up. So what's happening is, even if we can come to a kind of a pre-COVID normal level in the next few months, but because of higher demand of automotive products globally, as well as the other industries, there is going to be a shortage. So in my opinion, I think it's going to take at least one more year before we can say that supply and demand is in equilibrium. But as Vijay said, I think the worst more or less we have seen. Unfortunately for us, still we are going through that worst phase. October, November and December, I think, are very bad for us, unfortunately, and especially when we have launched a new car, Aster. So we are getting all kinds of comments from the customers. The communication is becoming difficult, but hopefully from first quarter, Jan-Feb onwards, situation should improve a little bit. And from April, I expect it should be much better. Normal, 9 months to 1 year.
Let me go back to Vinod Aggarwal ji, your segment, commercial vehicle, where telematics connectivity is directly linked to the profitability of the fleet owners. And that's the importance of connectivity or telematics, things like that really becomes very important. How do you see the current crisis there?
Absolutely. I think it is not only connectivity, it's the basic functioning of the vehicle is now dependent on these chips, because the engines has these ECUs and the ECUs have these semiconductors. And as rightly put by both Veejay and Rajeev, I think our thinking is that the burst should be behind us. And of course, we should see some improvements day by day. But if you go to the history of this, that why this has happened, I think when the COVID broke out, that time all of us reduced our schedules, and then this industry is very, very little dependency there on the auto industry. Like if I got some figures, if this industry size is around $475 billion, the semiconductor industry size, the entire their dependence on auto industry is only 7% of that. It's $35 billion. So out of 475, $35 billion they supply to us. So the balance, their dependency is on telecom and on electronics and on computers, laptops, and all these things. And when we reduced our requirement, the other industry was going strong. Like for example, when we were working from home, the demand for laptops went up, or the 5G was launched. And then it's the question of allocation of the capacity. They allocated the entire capacity of the auto industry. When we reduced our schedules, that entire thing got allocated to increasing demand of 5G and laptops and all those electronic requirements. So as a result of that, of course, they are not willing to give that capacity back to us. That is why this crisis has happened. And now, of course, we are going back to them. And as Veejay said, that we are now operating on just in time, or the inventory levels are low with us. And then this entire lead time, the cycle time for getting this is very long, because there are 3 tiers suppliers involved: tier 1, tier 2, tier 3. Like tier 3, if you start with silicon, commodity, then you have to convert into wafer, then the wafers you have to convert into semiconductor, then semiconductors into ECUs. So it's a 3-tier supplier, and each is also based on in various countries. So there are geopolitical reasons, there are this location of these suppliers. Then, of course, then wave 2 happened. So that is why this problem is quite significant. And as rightly said, I think my own assessment is it will still continue for another 9 to 12 months, because it's very capital intensive. It's not easy to increase the capacity very fast. And these people have taken some steps, but not that serious steps. Therefore, we have to be prepared for more time.
Okay, we have to be prepared for at least a year before we get out of this crisis. Mr. Mysore, I just want to understand from you, you will give a probably a different perspective, because you were about to take off a business vertical in the automobile industry, which was having high hopes for a communication company like yourself. How do you again look back at your business strategy? How are you trying to change their strategy to realign with the changing scenario in automobiles?
Thanks, Nabeel. First of all, you all must be wondering why me being a communication player is amongst this panel as such. But actually, probably this would have been a bit inconceivable if we had gone back, even not very long ago, even 5 years back as well. But as I heard from all of my fellow panelists, Veejay, Rajeev, and Vinod, vehicles are becoming more and more connected. Vehicles are becoming more and more live. The data is getting, conceived at almost every stage of it. The way I would look at it is, I was just reading recently Future Bridge study, which they said the value of the vehicle itself today being about the hardware. If I have to take it, if 100 is the value of the vehicle, close to 70 to 80% used to be around hardware part of it, as of even as early as 2020 kind of thing. But if I just move 10 years down the line, it's going to be around 40 or minus 40 minus kind of percentages, which basically means that the vehicles are becoming more and more software defined vehicle. So we call in our tech language software defined network now. The hardware itself is becoming more and more configurable remotely, virtually, and then that much more agile in terms of our development. That's what the same concept is getting more and more into that vehicle construct, actually, if I take it. And I also see the communication, any communication player to be growing along with the automobile segment itself, how it is going, where it is not just the V2X connectivity, in which case vehicle to X or anything, and it is more becoming AC to X. That's where it's auto components into that X. So basically, the construct of the communication itself is becoming in our language, we call it as research to road. When I say research to road, starting from a design construct of a vehicle being there, and through the scope, through the journey of that whole vehicle being designed, defined, developed, and various automobile components being configured and then assembled, and then getting into that production and then into that market. So where all this data could be seen, and again, it needs to be virtual, again, it needs to be agile, it needs to be changeable as the the vehicle, the quality itself would get monitored, not wait for the end production to be coming in. That's where I would say that the communication industry is, I would say, a very, very married, I would say, joined at the hips in terms of how the whole automobile industry itself is being developed as such. Very initial thoughts of it, but as we speak more and more, as I hear from my friends here, it is very interesting to hear how the whole industry itself, at the back of the outcome, what we have seen, the chip shortage or whatever it is, and then how the diversification and how the cloudification, how the virtualization is the norm of the day in the course of the development of the vehicles, how it is seen.
Mysore will get into the detail and understand how the digital services are going to be available with the connected environment, and your role is going to be very important. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of how the connected vehicle is going to progress, what are the business and services going to come, let me go back to the basic again. There's an estimation by a report that a loss of about $211 billion is going to come because of the chip shortage on automobile industry's burden. Rajiv, just want to understand what's the way out. Do you think this report is going to be an actual, or the auto industry can pivot and play? What are the ways forward? What would be your message to your counterparts? How can they, counter this kind of impending loss that is seen?
So I think I haven't seen this report, what you are referring to, Nabeel, but I guess the people are talking about perceived losses because of opportunity lost, right, and sales. And so let's say every month the auto industry in four-wheeler segment I'm talking about, we sell, let's say, close to 250,000 to 300,000 vehicles, and that's the kind of a demand every month. But we are producing short of the, let's say, 20% short of that. So multiply that by an average value, probably comes to some number, and that's how probably you're saying it. So one thing is clear, that the demand seems to be robust. That's true. But also I would like to say that we don't know exactly the real the booking, because all of us have got good bookings, which is a good thing, and we may have a feel good factor. But same amount of time, let's assume if suppose the supply improves, and now it's a free flow availability at some point of time, as an example, which is unfortunately not going to happen in the next few months. But let's assume if that's the case, then we would get to know what exactly is the real weighting. Because there may be some multiple bookings also right now going on. So on one hand, I may feel very good that I'm sitting on next 6 months of bookings, but when supply comes, suddenly it evaporates. And that's what we have spent enough time in the industry to know, how it happens. So the $200 billion, or what that number, I mean, somebody has just done a simple maths of, demand minus supply gap multiplied by average number, and so that's the loss. So I really exactly don't know, but the point is, yes, we all have shortages. How do we communicate it well to the consumer? I think that's very important. And I think there's an area of improvement, even at our level, at MG India level. I think we can improve on that. Also, we need to have a clear communication with our dealers, so the dealers can communicate to the customer also in case. So communication is very important. Second, whatever way we can manage our production mix, because everyone, as you know, if you go in the product hierarchy, on the base model, you have less chips, but there are some basic chips, like ECU or ESC, if ESC is standard, there are some basic chips. So you can't produce a car without chips as such, but you can go variant by variant and see how much you can do it. Then the third is flexibility in production. We all are learning now that how can you produce the cars without certain parts, and then when the parts come, then you can fit it and send it fast to the dealer. So how do you become flexible in that production process? I think we all are learning. And then obviously, then in terms of availability, in terms of procurement of chips, all of us are becoming adept in trading and things like that. So we didn't know that some traders existed in this business, and now we are talking to these traders and trying to get these chips at multiples of premium they are paying for those chips, but we are doing it, and we are air freighting parts and things like that. So at every position we are trying to just find a way to maximize the production, and also I think we need to improve on the communication with customers and dealers. That's how we are trying to manage, and we should manage.
Quick fix remedies are on the way. You rightly pointed that the actual bookings will come out only when the deliveries start. Then people will probably cancel some of the booking because of the multiple bookings they might have done, in hope that whichever we get the faster, that will be my car. Veejay, I'll come back to you. As Mr. Aggarwal was also mentioning that we cut the production soon after pandemic spread out. Do you think the just-in-time kind of system that in the auto industry has been following for a long time is to blame because they were almost sitting at a zero inventory. Auto industry doesn't have a inventory hold up system. So do you think that also played a role, and how are you trying to cope up with that? Rajiv has very nicely pointed out that they are going to the next level of flexible manufacturing. Earlier we used to have flexibility in terms of line. Now they are talking about flexibility in terms of producing a vehicle without a particular component being there which could be fitted afterwards. How safe and secure these kind of production methods will be? What's your thought on this?
So I think there are two questions in there. Let me take the first part, and let me begin with the first part. As they always say, hindsight is always 2020. So clearly, of course, when we look back, what happened, and all the speakers have said cutting down of schedules, the percentage share of automobiles in the ECU industry. All of these are reasons we are where we are. But I think to me. At the same time, necessity becomes a mother of invention. And I think what all of us have learned clearly is agility. And you can take that word, whether it is in inventory, whether it is in manufacturing, whether it is flexibility in processes of rolling down vehicles without ECU. But I think the two big takeouts is clearly one, and all the more so given most vehicles, all of us who are on this panel representing our companies and brands, whatever we launch in the future is going to be even more complex in terms of electronics, communication, connectivity, all of that, right? So one is, the kind of schedules that we now need to release to our suppliers. That to me is one big change we brought in. Kind of schedules, time frame of schedules, number one. Number two, monitoring of not just tier one, but also tier two in terms of what happens with supply. That's another big lesson that I think the industry has learned, and all of us are implementing it in our own way as per our processes and systems. But I think the third one also that we've picked up and what we are focusing on is what we call weak signals. And I think what's happened with the pandemic and with ECU supplies is one weak signal that the industry didn't pick up. There could be many more in the future. And I think that's one area which we are focusing on to try and understand what we need to prepare for going forward. So that's the answer to your first part of the question. Your second part, Nabeel, was I think that agility is the answer. I would not necessarily say just in time or not just in time, because through the process of identifying risk areas going forward based on technology, geopolitical implications to supply chain, there still will be many, many components which would remain to be on just in time. And clearly there is the evolution of a so to say a new bucket or a new basket of components where the principle of just in time may not apply.
Okay, there will be slight changes in some parts.
I think it'll be a mix and match as we go forward, and who knows as we go forward. I think the pandemic is only one input that's come in. The way the world is getting connected today, and especially as we move forward in terms of technology of cleaner technology vehicles, I think the dependence on sourcing, etc., the way that will play out will make manufacturers relook at their inventory and manufacturing strategy.
Don't you think this holding up inventory will increase the cost? And as Rajiv also mentioned that they are paying, or you also mentioned that you are taking chips with a higher premium. Will that again cause increase of cost of the vehicles? Will you pass on these cost burdens to the customers? All three of you, if you could answer.
No, clearly, it does clearly have a bearing and an impact in terms of overall cost and cash flows of the business. But, again, I think we also do understand that there is a reality of sensitivity to how much the market can absorb, even in terms of price increases. So, we did talk about supply chain issues. Let's not forget that an equally important area that is impacting the industry today is prices of commodities. and the ability to pass that kind of cost to customers. So it is challenging times, and that's where one needs to be a little bit more innovative in terms of feature, value engineering, speccing the vehicle appropriately for customer, negotiations in terms of the entire material cost. So I guess all levers that play into variable and fixed costs need to be kind of really looked at from a zero base going forward in terms of how we do costing and pricing.
Mr. Aggarwal, your take, then we'll go to Rajeev.
No, first, I think I will take the question on that cost versus price. I very well remember, I think Rajeev also will bear me out. He had been in the similar discussions when he was with us. Earlier, long back, we used to take the assumption that if there is inflation, it will be passed on in the price increase. That was the assumption when we made the business plans or budgeting, so it was a clear assumption. Oh, this is the inflation, then this will be passed on. No, those equations have gone totally now. Those equations are no more applicable. Now there is no linkage. What is the cost increase and what is the price increase? Of course, the need for price increase is there, but how much we can make, that is not in our hand. That's in the hand of all the customers, or the competition is so strong that you are not alone. There are so many other people who are also getting hit by these cost increases. So therefore, I think the value engineering, cost reductions, wastage reduction, various other innovative ways, how you reduce cost, how you manage your the cost, how you manage your price management, how you manage various variants, how you manage product mix. So I think all those things have become much more relevant. And so this cost and pricing equation is not a direct linear equation now, no more. And as far as this crisis is concerned, I think it has given us a lot of learnings. And of course, it has been a big, you can say, big challenge and big work for our supply chain people. And they have really done a great job. And I won't say for the commercial vehicle industry, I won't say that we have lost some sales, because still we are all chasing the customers. Customers are not chasing us. Still all the manufacturers, we are all chasing the customers that go and come and buy trucks. And so there is no such. I don't have that feeling that we are not able to produce, or we are not able to. That situation we have not reached. We are still much lower, even though it has impacted. The production is not easy. But at the same time, we are still not clear, as Rajeev mentioned, that it is not clear that how much is the actual loss. Is it really the loss, or is it the national loss, or is it, or of course the sales people will always say, the people who are in sales and market, they will always say that no, production is not there. You are not giving us vehicles, we can't sell. So that challenge will always remain between industry and sales people. So never know that who is right and who is wrong. So, as of now, the situation is very clear that that it is still not clear as far as commercial vehicle industry is concerned, because definitely still demand has not come back. And we have the challenges, but I think the industry is managing, and hopefully we should be out of this crisis, as we said, 9 to 12 months.
Rajeev, your thoughts?
Yeah, so I think between Vinod and Veejay, they have covered good aspects. And I was smiling when Vinod was talking, because Vinod is from finance background. So now when he's saying that inflation is not linking the price increase, that's really good to hear from him, because internally we know how the finance guys react. But he's the big boss now, obviously. But
no, earlier that used to be the push, that inflation is that it will be passed on.
Right. So I think, I would say a few things over and above what Vinod and Veejay, they already talked about a few aspects of our business. See, I think, sometimes guys say, so you're not able to produce, and your selling is not a problem, so then you must be enjoying your life. But unfortunately, that's not the case, right? So we have the cost pressures and supply chain pressures. There's a cost related to supply chain also. So I think all of us are trying to find out the best way of procurement, best way of sourcing, internal efficiencies and things like that. But the fact is, we are not able to pass on everything to the consumer. As the luck would have been, we have 4 products, Hector, Aster, EV, and Gloucester. All 4 are in shortages. All 4. But I'm not able to pass on all the price cost increase to the consumer just like that, because you're not working alone. You're working in a competitive set, and also you need to manage consumers' expectations. You need to make sure that it's not like brutal, because at this point of time you have your say a little bit, but then you have to see the sustainability of it. Also, one thing is very important, which I have seen in my experience now. Earlier the price increases used to be twice a year or thrice a year. Now it is, theoretically, it can be every second month. And that's a big change in the industry. And we have done our Hector price increases, I think, 5 times. And if you look at Tesla, which is a different model altogether, they have done 7 or 8 increases in this year, sorry. And so because the things are so dynamic, things are so unusual, none of us, if I can say on behalf of all of us here, that none of us have seen this kind of unusual scenario in our life, and all of us are pretty experienced people. So things are changing in the industry, and that's what I think we need to, if I steal the word again from Veejay, we need to be very, very agile, and we need to challenge each and every principle of our industry, frankly, just to survive and hopefully thrive in this kind of situation.
So even the customers have, become adept to it, and they are accepting the cost increase. Almost every car maker increased the prices multiple times due to increase in the raw material cost in the last 5-6 months. Everybody, even the tractor manufacturers.
No, but Nabeel, still the 100% cost has not been passed on. That's the point I was trying to make. It's not that easy that suppose my cost has gone up by 8%, so our price increase also is 8%. Price increase still is with some lag. There's a delta. So you're not able to pass on everything. But yes, the way things are happening, we should expect more price increases in future.
Even looking at the current situation, especially the fuel price hike and all, the operating cost of the consumer has increased. So of course, a big shock in terms of price could be a deterrent in terms of demand sluggishness also. You pointed out about Tesla that does,
Sorry, Nabeel, I just wanted to make one more point just to add to what Rajeev said. And don't forget that there's been a significant investment by the industry in technology when we've just moved to BS6. Now we are investing towards BS 6.2 and to meet CAFE norms. So there are lots of costs that from a technology point of view, automobile manufacturers need to carry. And don't forget that the level of industry today is even lower than what it was in 2019 for the PV. And if you look at CV and two-wheelers, it goes back to F15, F16 level. So I think there needs to be that perspective also kept in mind, in this conversation, that the necessity of price increases, again, going back to the point, manufacturers are doing it frequently, but we've not been able to pass on all of these to the customers. They are still sitting in the books.
Would you like to give it a number? What percentage of the cost you are able to really pass on, and how much cushioning you expect to have that you will pass?
I think that's a difficult one that will vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. But I think the larger point being, I think, and as SIAM, many of us here in this group are members of SIAM. SIAM has been taking this up with the various ministries and industry, that the kind of impetus that the auto industry needs, that one needs to keep in mind. We are all talking about that it's great that there is so much of a demand and comeback, but let's not forget the base was very low if you look at last year and the year before that. So one actually should be comparing it to where the base was. And in comparison to that, I think we still have a long way to go.
Long way to go. I'd like to bring in Mr. Mysore now here. Mr. Mysore, you heard Rajeev saying that how Tesla is increasing the cost probably every month or even more, 7 times in a year or so. And their cost increase is a bit different. They do some kind of software upgrade where you mentioned that software is going to be a main part in automobiles. And there's an estimation that connected vehicle global market size is currently about $65 billion according to Statista. And this is going to go up to $191 billion by 2028 and $121 billion by 2025. So that kind of obviously a big market that's only on the connected domain, which is going to be driven by people like you. The communication people are going to be very important and pivotal to this kind of business scenario. Looking at the current impact on the market, how do you see this? Do you think the trajectory going to continue, and do you think what kind of changes in terms of business imperative that the automobile industry was having in terms of connectivity you see after this? Is there a knee-jerk reaction of the current crisis or something that you feel?
No, it's a great, segue into what just now I heard from Veejay, Rajeev, and Vinod. Actually, if you see that this is not a knee-jerk reaction, I wouldn't call it that way, because anyway, it's equally important how the maturity of the connectivity related the platform was there, even from a technological advancement as well as from a the predictability of the whole vehicle behavior, vehicle driver behavior, or the components behavior, and all of them as such. If you look at last about, I would say 2 to 3 years, in fact, we as Tata Communications itself, we developed our platform, we call it as a MOVE, basically mobility on virtual mobility and virtually enablement as such. This is across the globe. And again, it depends on country-wise what exactly is the connectivity requirement, what is the kind of the data inputs which they are doing, and how is the manufacturing setup being looked at. If you look at it last about 2-3 years, this has been one of the digital transformation in the automobile segment. I think that has really catapulted heavily, which basically means that I like the statement which I heard from Veejay and also Rajeev, basically commenting about agility, not just towards the manufacturing side of it, agility towards even the process development, or in fact, I would go a little bit towards the skill set development also. So when you look at these three in a horizon, the agility or the adaption, how is it coming up? It is basically coming up from adaption of your artificial intelligence, adoption towards your virtual, basically the cloud infrastructure, how you are going to do, how your whole IT infrastructure itself is being revamped or relooked at it. Because in the context of a connectivity, this digitization of the whole journey of the vehicle, starting from a conceptualization, I used a word research to road, I will again bring back that word. How does this whole monitoring of this quality of design, quality of the various models of testing, then the quality of production, then into that stress testing, then into that market, and then the dealership behavior of it. So it starts from an auto component manufacturing going up to that selling or the user itself actually. And it is equally important, the customer feedback mechanism, how it goes. What in one of the studies, what I was also looking at, if a vehicle needs to be recalled for any of the upgrades or something like that, that used to be costing anywhere between $120 to $150 a vehicle. With this digitization, with this connectivity, what we have been looking at it is almost 1/100th of it, which is basically $1 to $1.50, $1.50. So basically, that's the construct which is being looked at. In fact, especially since you brought out Tesla, the transformation of the automobile industry itself is not from a ICE going into your EV, it is also into the connected ecosystem as such. So that's how the transformation of the complete industry is happening. And around this, how is the cost management is happening? Because connectivity would give you multiple things as a cost benefit also. Now, one, whether it is an upgrade, whether it is a firmware upgrade, whether it is a software upgrade, whether it is a health monitoring of that vehicle, whether it is a servicing related connectivity, whether it is a the whole health of the vehicle, if somebody has to monitor, and how do you enhance your revenue part of it. So when you look at these things, on one side we spoke about how the cost need to be looked at, and at the same time, how does the consumer looks at this cost? At the same time, the cost of manufacturing, which is at the back of the whole automobile itself becoming a much more software defined than towards the hardware, which used to be the norm of what all of us have seen through our life as such actually. So if I had to sum up your, if I had to comment on your question, I would say that digital transformation is not a knee-jerk reaction. It is definitely the in thing. And with the likes of what the platform, what we have been able to create, whether the manufacturing is in one geography, sold in a different geography, still the connectivity management could be done with the likes of the platform, what I mentioned earlier as such.
Mr. Mysore, I'll quickly like to understand from you what will be the pie in terms of cost when a car is produced in terms of connectivity or the software. What percentage you think?
Are you saying the connectivity itself it would be, I can tell you it will be very minuscule, because to the benefit what we get out of this. See, connectivity is a very liberally used or very abused word actually. It's not the connectivity.
I'm talking about entire gambit, be it EC,
I agree. I totally agree.
Vehicle or vehicle 2X or something, all inclusive. What percentage of software cost will be in terms of producing? Suppose 100 rupees is spent on producing a car. How much is going to be software from your point of view?
I would put it as very minuscule in comparison to the larger concept what we have been looking at it. So that's why I don't even want to put some specific number or a percentage to it. It is at that level. But only thing is that you need to have a specific auto component, a specific platform related software, which is more specific to that particular vehicle or that particular manufacturing setup. Rest of them managing through remotely. For example, we call it as a over-the-air updates now. That's basically we call it as SOTA, software over the air as such. For every one of them, whether it is a driver behavior, whether it is a driver infotainment related one, whether it is a service related aspects, whether it is a health related aspect, or whether it is a distress signaling which is required. When you put that, that's where these specific applications related to that would reside in the device, what is there. And when the manufacturing itself happens, the way we have been perceiving that is, we call it as a born connected vehicle. The born connected vehicle is each component of your vehicle would be, in a sense, the connectivity management system would be embedded into that system already. The moment vehicle comes onto the field, it is ready for interacting with various components what we have been looking at.
Thank you, Mr. The other aspect is that with connectivity, a lot of collaboration of several business entity will come into force. Rajeev, do you think by this way there could be a kind of arrangement where you can reduce the ownership cost of the vehicle for the end buyers? Because a lot of digital services can be integrated, and when could be a media or something like that, the advertisement, autotisement or something of that kind of scenario could be, created. So in that scenario, do you see the cost could be reduced by enabling service from the cross industry?
So there are two aspects of it. One is like operating cost of the car, like what can happen, and second is additional services which you can offer to the customer, and for that customer has to pay. So the cost actually goes up based on the benefit. So when on the first part, when you talk about can the cost go down? Yes, in certain cases when you can repair the car through remote over the air, as an example in Hector, and all our cars actually you can do it over the air. You can do some updates. So there you don't have to bring the car to the workshop, as an example, and only thing is, for that, again, you need a good connection and good bandwidth connection, because you need to be connected. So in that case, yes, the cost of services go down. But more important part, frankly, here is that extra services can be offered to the consumer through these connectivities, and that pertains to various areas. So as an example, in the newly launched Aster, we are saying this car can be used as a platform. So we are providing services like music service. Most of the companies are doing it now, but the streaming of the music you can do it. The digital passport of the car relating to the car health can be obtained through one of our collaborators. You can also, use that digital passport for availing maybe a better price for your used car premium. You can pay maybe less for insurance. We are also talking about, we have tied up with another startup for, providing you parking slots. You can book your parking in advance, before you reach the place. So those kind of additional services you can start offering. The concierge services, now you can do it on the car. As an example, when you get connected to the call center or the pulse hub, as we call it, you can avail some good services as concierge. And obviously, there is a cost attached to it, and customers has to pay. So there are lots of things you can do now. Only thing is, one thing is paramount, that it should not be at the done of safety of the driver, safety of the occupants, because I think, though on one hand, the car screen is becoming, as I call it, the fourth screen now in your life, but same amount of time, the safety is very important. So when you're driving, you should not be able to, there are certain things which are disabled, so you can't avail certain services. But once you are stationary, the car is stationary, then you can avail lots of things. So this whole connectivity thing, in my opinion, I think is becoming a differentiator as of now. It may also become standard, a cost of entry maybe after a few years. But right now, I think very few players in India, and I can say Mahindra is also here. So, both of us are providing it. So this is a differentiator in my opinion. And there's a huge scope and also revenue streams possibly through this connectivity in future.
Veejay, your thought, some brand can be roped in and you can charge them probably to advertise their products or to bring them on those platforms, vehicle platforms. You should rather charge them, because at the end of the day, you are giving them customers and users. So will that be of help?
I think we should just, first, I just wanted to build on a little bit on what Rajeev said. And to me, the profit pool and the revenue pool because of connectivity and software is a huge opportunity going forward. And I'm not able to recollect, but I think it was an Accenture report which spoke about revenue and profit pool coming from software being almost equivalent to the vehicle revenue by 2030. On the revenue side, and the profit pool becomes higher because obviously you're through monetization. And we just heard, Madhusudhan say that the cost is very low. So, clearly the profit pool becomes a lot higher. But I think what we just need to be careful about is monetization will be used on adding value to customer, through which we should look at how the profit and revenue pool comes in, and not necessarily through advertising by collaborating with other brands. Because don't forget, from a consumer's point of view, attention span is less. We are all far more busier than we used to be earlier. And the eyeball share on data needs to be that much more focused. So I think what brands will keep in mind is, while you create differentiation and use that as an opportunity for revenue and profit pool, it's got to be towards adding value to customer. And which is where I agree with what Rajeev said, whether it's insurance, etc., etc. That's where you add value and you use that for revenue and profit.
Mr. Aggarwal, how do you see it for the commercial vehicle segment? Because the customer, everything is slightly different from the passenger cars and all.
In fact, for the commercial vehicles, it is much, much more relevant, because these are the business assets. And through connectivity and through the various other services related to that, we can reduce the overall costs for the customers significantly. We can offer various types of services, like the predictive maintenance is becoming the latest service which we can offer. Similarly, remote diagnostics. For trucks, basically, they need to remain on the road for 100% of the time. And these assets are used extensively. Like, for example, a truck, if currently it is running 8,000 or 10,000 kilometers in a month, how it can run 20,000 kilometers? So if you have to reach there, then of course, I think the connectivity is going to play a very, very important role. We are able to reduce the downtime for our customers through various types of services. Like, for example, we are already offering predictive maintenance services through these connected solutions. Now we can tell the customer or the driver who when he's driving on the road on a highway, we can telephone him if there is any problem is there in the engine. It is getting overheated or the engine oil is low or any other problem is there. Our uptime center, our control center, it knows it in advance through this connected solution. And based on the analytics, that number pops up that this truck is in problem. And then we call up the
opportunity in predictive maintenance.
predictive. And then suppose the engine was to seize and you are able to avoid that, how much downtime you have saved? Just imagine that. Suppose the engine seizes, then it takes 5-7 days to repair. Now you will save engine from the seizure. And the second biggest advantage.
We have only 3 minutes left. So one very pertinent question in terms of data monetization, we have to see the privacy and also cyber security. These are the two biggest aspects to this connectivity. I just want to understand from you, Mr. Madhusudhan, how well prepared the communication service providers are in terms of ascertaining data privacy, because that's a big question mark here when we talk about the connectivity. And second part of the question is how ADAS and things, future technology kind of thing, where communication is going to play a role. How with the 5G coming up, entire scenario will change that you look at?
No, absolutely. Nabeel, actually, I would have added that as a closing comment also as well. Frankly, security becomes very, very critical here because every vehicle is like you and me here communicating. It is so critical that every part of that vehicle's data is being transported to some other way, whichever is the location. And especially this is becoming virtual. And with a zero trust networks, which are riding on the physical network, which all of us have seen, that gives a security to the core, number one. Number two, it becomes more and more important that we call it as GDPR now, global. Basically, it's a domestic, within the geography, it needs to be there. Data privacy rights, actually. So, which is what, from a regulatory perspective also, especially for a manufacturer who manufactures in one country and then it is being driven in multiple countries, how do you monitor that data being going back and forth? And then that's the second part of it as such, actually. Finally, coming to your last question on 5G, in fact, that's where my comment on research to road, which is where the new next generation manufacturing setup, it's becoming, as we speak, we are trialing with at least 3 or 4 industrial sectors. One is around manufacturing, other is around, 2 of them around automobile, both in India as well as international, and another one being a mining sector. Basically, the way the whole 5G is happening is, one, it is giving the speed, which is what you require, especially during the stress testing in the manufacturing setup. The second one, it needs to be low latency. It needs to be zero latency, actually. And then finally, it needs to be the quality of the data input, what it comes in, and how do you monitor it. Across these 3, 5G is the one which is an in thing. And it is just that how the maturity of this, and then basically the return on investment is the one which is being looked at. As we speak, across the globe, this trials and then POCs are being happening. And the outcome also has been quite prevalent, and then it has been very encouraging, actually. So those are some of the, say, in a very brief comments to your questions. Otherwise, it's a topic on its own, which could be spoken for long as such.
We'll definitely touch upon that topic, but let's conclude this panel discussion. But before that, I would like to have 30 seconds remark from all of you on what next for the connected vehicles. Start with you, Rajeev.
I think, as I said, it's going to become cost of entry in near future. I think it was nothing few years back. It is becoming a differentiator, and it will become cost of entry in future.
I think 2 things. I totally agree. All of us know that that's going to be table stakes going forward. I think the key point is going to be connectivity mixed with cleaner technology, which is when the EV space comes in, which will totally redefine the industry. We are already seeing what's the definition of kinds of players that can emerge in the future. And to me, the most interesting part will be the kind of collaborations that will happen between automobile companies and software companies to create the future.
Connectivity is going to become the hygiene in future. And of course, you won't have any vehicle without which is not connected.
Madhusudhan ji, your take.
Thank you. So anyway, first of all, wonderful interacting with all of you. But I think connectivity needs to grow along with automobile industry. I think we are in for that growth. And the digital transformation journey, which the industry has embarked on, connectivity will become an inherent player in the whole ecosystem, the development what we have been doing.
Thank you so much. That's all on the subject of semiconductor crisis. What next for the connected vehicles? The expert panel agrees that there is going to be the light at the end of the dark tunnel. It will take about a year before we walk past this crisis, and also going forward, connectivity with clean technology and a lot of flexibility, not in the way we manufacture, but also in the processes involving entire, process of making cars. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for joining ET Auto Connected Vehicle Virtual Summit.
Thank you, everyone, for discussing every possible aspect of the topic. Indeed, a detailed and insightful discussion. A quick reminder to use the hashtag #ETAutoConvec in all your tweets. Let's proceed further and explore more interesting topics.